ookums and spookums and stuff. It's the Grub Street Lodger, and it's that, very mystical time of day, 6:30 on the Sunday. I'm going back to work tomorrow. I've had this week off, and I'm going back to work tomorrow. But weirdly, this is the easy job, because tomorrow I've got lots of writing to do when I get back from work. So I'm going to go through what I have read in October. And I have essentially I've got something on there. 2001 Space Odyssey sized pillar of books here. Now, a lot of these books were as part of my reading as many children's books in 48 hours as I could, so they're going to be rather quickly, one sentence got through. But even with that, there's still quite a bit to talk about. Oh, me. Let's get started. We started with The Old English Baron by Clara Reeve. Now, the thing about The Old English Baron was I've been reading loads of gothic novels and sensation novels over the past couple of months now, and this one was one that took Otranto and tried to retell the story of Otranto, which is the first gothic novel, but with the weirdness dialed down and the supernatural elements dialed down, because she basically says in her introduction, that stuff was silly and it made me laugh. And what I remembered of it, that stuff was silly and it made me laugh. So I thought, right, well, let's see how we do with this. It's kind of boring. Trouble is, although all the nonsensical stuff in Otranto is silly and it does make you laugh, it's also the stuff that's the most interesting. Pardon me, shouldn't have had that in Otranto. So, yeah, that's the trouble. The setup's actually very much like Lady Audley's Secret, almost. This guy called Philip, he comes back. He wasn't called Philip in Lady Audley. No. He comes back, and he finds that his best friend is dead. His best friend's wife's dead. Their son's dead. And there's someone else living in the house now. And actually, it's even more further complicated than that, because someone else owns the house and is leasing it to the people who are there now, his best friend's house. And he's like, oh, okay, fair enough. And the people who are leasing his best friend's house are pretty decent people. It's an old English baron who is the one of the title, which is weird because he's not the main character, I think. But and his sons and their friend, who is a sort of a peasant boy, but who's very, very noble. And seems far more noble and great than his peasant origins allow. And you know where this is going, because this is really, really obvious. It is, of course, somebody has murdered his best friend, somebody has murdered his best friend's wife, and the baby has been snuck off with peasantry, and so they've got to sort this out, essentially. What's weird is, when I say they, you'd think Philip, the guy who comes back, and it's best friend and all this. No, he disappears from the text. We now go with the son, who unravels very, very quickly the central mystery of this story. That's why I don't feel worried about spoiling it, apart from the fact it's an old book. It's an old book that doesn't really hold on to its mystery for very long. It's about 20 pages. And you find out, oh yeah, okay. So now this has to be sorted out, and it does. So the last 60 pages is legal wrangling. So what's the Castle of Otranto without the spooky, scary, cool bits? Legal stuff. I like it in that Clara Reeve did see something wrong with the formula that Walpole had made for his book, and went for a way that was different. I think other people took her sort of line and did better things with it. So I think the story of the Gothic novel seems to be trying to create the ideal version of this Gothic novel, whatever it is, and all the different writers taking off different ways, and their failures are as instructive and inspiring as their successes. And I think Clara Reeve's failure to create an interesting story by cutting out the ghosty stuff inspired more of the sensation-y stuff, and maybe even modern thrillers, but you need to squint to see that, I think. Now, the next book I read, so this is 4 Gothic novels. I read 3 of these Gothic novels. Wow. Also, I'm not so well again. So out of the 3 Gothic novels, 2 of them were rereads. The first was The Castle of Otranto, because I read it about 12 years ago, maybe more, because I've been keeping records for over 12 years, and it wasn't in the records. So a long time ago, I read The Castle of Otranto, and I thought I remembered it really well. It turns out I remembered the first 70 pages perfectly, and nothing else that happened in it. Like, I remembered all that stuff at the beginning, the big helmet falling down, all of that, and then actually the mystery and what it was all about, and the shock twist at the end, and all of that. Didn't remember any of it. And Clara Reeve was right. The ghosty stuff in this is ridiculous. In fact, the word in my notes that keeps coming up with the Castle of Otranto is Pythonesque. It feels like Monty Python. I mean, the big helmet, that's like the foot. There's a bit where all these knights come in and they're carrying a huge sword, and they're all carrying it together, and then they sort of plonk it down by the helmet, and that just felt very Monty Python, just this stretching it out as this carrying this big sword. And even the purposeful comic bits about the servants were very Monty Python, because Monty Python does this thing where, like, someone wants something and someone just sort of gets in the way. So in the films, Life of Brian, Brian's trying to buy the fake beard, and the guy's trying to haggle, and it's making it a pain. Or King Arthur wants to see the Holy Grail, and the people at the top are bickering about sparrows. Or someone wants to buy some cheese, but there's no cheese in the cheese shop. It's a very Monty Python way of setting a gag up. And in this, Manfred, the bad guy, he wants to find out what the spooky thing was, and the two servants are so spooked out by the spooky thing that neither of them can talk about it. And so Clara Reeve was right. You just keep laughing at the Castle of Otranto, and it is often at it and not with it, because it's kind of goofy. In fact, I was saying the Gothic novel seems to be inspired by failures. This seems to be the big failure that started it all, because it's known as the first Gothic novel. But I think if it was just the novel, it wouldn't really have inspired anybody. I think it's the second preface that actually gave birth to the Gothic novel. Because in the second preface, Walpole, he spends a lot of it trying to justify his comic servants by going, look, Shakespeare did comic servants, it's not, and he also spends the rest of it trying to justify the fact that he pretended it was a true story from somewhere. Oh, you weren't supposed to really believe it, were you? But the other little thing he does is he says what his intentions were in the book. His intentions were to have the zest and the vigour and the imagination of old romances, he kind of Orlando Furiosos and stuff, with the more relatable, intricate personal dynamics of a modern novel. That's what he's trying to do, and that is what he fails to do completely. And so Clara Reeve goes, well, the problem is you've gone too far on the ghosts, so she goes up on the other stuff. And that doesn't quite work. And then other people put their different spins on it. And I think that's where the Gothic novel comes from. People trying to solve Walpole's conundrum. How do you mix these two elements together in a way that works? And we've got a whole load of really interesting books out of it. The next book, Vathek, by I can never remember who wrote Vathek. I've just bought a novel about him. William Beckford, of Bath, Fonthill Abbey, all that. He wrote this when he was 19, and he probably wasn't inspired by the Walpole thing, because Vathek's very, very different. It's not like Castle of Otranto. It's more of a sort of 1001 Nights Persian-y kind of tale. It tells the story of Vathek, who really existed, but was probably nothing like this, who is a Shah, and he's or a Sultan or something. It doesn't really matter. It's East, mystical East. It's very Orientalist type stuff. And if that pushes your buttons, you might not like this, because it's sort of saying in the East there's magic, there's demons, there's unimaginable luxury and cruelty. Is kind of, and my God, the book loves the unimaginable luxury and cruelty. So the Vathek creates this wonderful palace with all these, the Temple of the Nose, where everything smells nice, and the Temple of the Tummy, where everything tastes nice, and the Temple of the naughty bits, where there's tons of virgins and things. And he wants to know everything. And then this guy comes into his kingdom who has these wonderful items, including self-walking shoes. And he wants to know about it. And this guy is very sneaky and hides away. And he gets imprisoned, the guy with the self-walking shoes, but escapes. And Vathek kicks his servants from dawn till dusk. And he says, 40,000 kicks. I wasted 40,000 kicks on them. You're like, that's weird. In other weird kicking things, when the guy comes back, he rolls himself into a ball and the entire town kick him like a football into a stream. It's very strange. Anyway, in the end, the guy, the mysterious traveller with the self-walking shoes, gives Vathek the directions to hell. And Vathek goes, great, let's go. There must be some really cool things in hell. And so he travels light, you know. They use the entire country's worth of chintz for some reason. They have cages with beautiful women in them. And a huge, you know, all this stuff. And they all go off. Except for his mum. His mum doesn't go. Because his mum is really into mummies and dead things. And she's basically like, I'm going to hang around with my mummies and dead things. And one of my favourite parts of the book is when the mysterious stranger, they realise he's a demon and they try and summon him to get the message for, you know, how do we get to hell? She makes a special concoction out of mummies and dead things. It's great. And so off they go. But Vathek gets waylaid. He finds himself in this weird place with dwarf monks. And then he meets up with some people and he sees someone who he fancies and wants to be his latest and greatest wife. But she's in love, or at least betrothed, to her cousin who's called Gulshamru. And Gulshamru is this really, really effeminate man or young boy or teen. Or he's very, very effeminate, though. They keep saying he's more girly than she is. And Vathek's got to try and split them up and stuff. For some weird reason, in my head, Vathek fell in love with Gulshamru and they went off together. That is not what happens at all. Though, given William Beckford's history, you know, maybe that's what should have happened. But no, he manages to get her away and they go down to hell together. And it turns out hell's not very nice. You're like, oh, that's a surprise. I'd always assumed hell was lovely. And just to get his own back on his mum, he summons his mum into hell as well. You help me here, I summon you to hell. So she goes, but she just walks around saying hi to all the demons she's already met before. And then they all, their hearts explode and they all burn in hell and have a horrible time forever and ever the end. It's a weird story. It's funny because, again, this is one I hadn't read for about 13 years or so, and I remembered even less of it than I had of Castle of Otranto, but I remembered it was good fun. But it wasn't as good fun on reread. I think because now I knew that it was going to get quite crazy. It didn't get as crazy as I thought it would. And, like, for example, I remembered him falling in love with Gulshamru and stuff, which doesn't happen. So there you go. So the next book was the last one. This is the one in this I haven't read because the last one's Frankenstein, which I read before as well. But The Monk, also written by a 19-year-old, by Matthew Lewis. And The Monk is great. I think, now I've read The Monk, I've got some other Gothic novels, but I think there will be footnotes to The Monk. The Monk is, I think, the ultimate Gothic novel. It is brilliant. Let me set a little scene for you. So there's a monk. He's grown up in the church. He was found as a baby on the church door. He's called Ambrosio, and he's a very good talker. Everyone thinks he's wonderful. Some people think he's a saint even, and he's very proud of himself as well, and very strict. And so it starts off with him, and he's looking at his Virgin Mary statue, and he's feeling kind of sexual towards it, and he wants to rub his lips in her white-tipped bubbies, I think it called them, and no, he really wants to have sex with this statue. But he says, no, that's not very holy, is it? No, I just appreciate art. Like those anime people in their pillows and stuff. I just like the art. And then he goes off and he does sort of a trial of this nun who is pregnant. And he says, no, bugger off, nun who's pregnant. You deserve punishment because you're a pregnant nun and that's very naughty. And she's actually kind of the catalyst for most of the story later on. Then he goes to his best mate monk and he's like, hey, best mate monk, you seem a bit miserable. And best mate monk is, I am miserable. And he's like, why are you miserable, best mate monk? It's like, because, well, I'm actually a woman. What? Yeah, I'm a woman. I just came and I'm just being a monk because I want to be near you. Oh, whoa, 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 no, I'm Mr. Holy Monk. You can't be doing that. It's like, yeah, I know, but I don't want your body or anything. I just want to be near you. Can't we just be, whoa, no. And then she takes the hood off, which the whole time she's had the hood on. She takes the hood off. And she looks just like the Virgin Mary statue. It's because when she first fell for him, she had someone make the Virgin Mary statue and sent to him. So he's like, oh, bollocks, that's the statue I've been essentially masturbating over for the last few years. But a person, maybe we could talk about this. And she's like, yeah. I made myself into a statue for you. And he's like, actually, nah. You got to go. I'm sorry. This is going to hurt me as much as it hurts you. I don't think it will. Yeah, it will. It really hurt me because I've never actually liked anyone before, but sorry. Here, have a rose. Pick a rose. And as he picks a rose, a deadly centipede bites his finger. I didn't even... Deadly centipedes. And he's like, he falls over. And the doctor's like, I could fix him, but the deadly centipede poison, I can't do anything about the deadly centipede poison. And then 3 days later, he's got better, and everyone's like, miracle, he's come back to life. And he's like, I have come back to life, maybe I am a saint. Ooh. Hang on, my mate monk is ill. No way. She didn't do what I think she did she? Hey, mate monk who's really a woman, but no one else knows. You didn't do something daft to get me better, did you? And she's like, oh yes, I sucked the deadly centipede poison out, and now I'm dying. He's like, oh, I don't like that. No one's ever saved me before. I feel quite strongly for you now. I would do anything for you. And she's like, no, it's a good thing I'm dying, because, I said I wanted to be with you. Well, actually, I really want your body. So, either let me die, or give me your hot body. And he's like, all right then, have my hot body. And they shag. That's chapter 2. This whole book is full of things like that. A man, he accidentally elopes with a ghost who's his corpse who keeps trying to snog him. There's a woman who's locked up, and this is actually not even fun. This is horrible. She's locked up and she gives birth, and the baby dies, but she keeps nuzzling it, and she feels all the worms wiggling about in the baby and pretends that it's the baby being alive, and that's horrible. That's actually really disgusting. But then there's like just all these other things that are just daft, like the ghost eloping with the man, and all the centipede stuff. And there's some other ghosts, and people sell their souls to the devil, and there's witches and wizards, and naughty nuns, and the fire, and honestly, the monk, you got to read it. It's really good. So that's that. That was a really well explained. Next, I didn't read all this. I just read a tiny bit. I read The Vampyre by John William Polidori. So the night of Frankenstein, they're all challenged to write a ghost or a creepy story. Actually, Frankenstein wasn't written that night, and nor was this. Byron wrote the beginning of a vampire story, and Polidori sort of took it and did it. And then when he sold it, the publisher said, it's Byron's story. And Polidori's like, no, it's my story. I did that. And it's sold everywhere as Byron's story. Poor Polidori. Polidori's story. He's about 21 as well. 21-year-olds are writing some weird shit. Anyway, this is where the vampire first becomes a gentleman and is allowed to walk about and stuff and not just be a zombie, essentially. Early vampires are more sort of zombie-ish. But this is one who's a gentleman and he goes about. And it's a 20-page story. It's not very creepy. You see... So you get this gentleman who's obviously the vampire, but he's obviously the vampire to us because it's created a lot of the tropes that Dracula played off and that we know as a vampire trope. So it's that case of where you're the first, you sort of look like the unoriginal one. And so he's a posh man who always seems to be accidentally doing bad. He doesn't mean to be doing bad. And then the main character realises now he's a vampire. And it's all very scary. Oh no, what if he marries and eats my sister? Oh dear, he has. The end. Spoilers. Okay, so the next bit was the bit where I read children's books, and this is where I veered away from Gothic. So these are all the children's books I read. I've got a whole video about them. I would link it there if I knew how to do it. But just as quick then. Little Prince, a lot sadder than you think. Quite sweet. Pippi Longstocking. Every kid, I think, would want to be Pippi Longstocking, including me. Polly and the Wolf gets a bit repetitive over 4 of the books, but really cool. I really love the Wolf. Wolf is a great character. Beezus and Ramona. I actually really hate Ramona in this book because she is a 4-year-old and, not a nice one. The Borrowers. I love this book. It has a gothic-y kind of frame to it. I love the Borrower's world. I love how they think that we're just there to borrow from because we're these horrible big ogre people. It's great. Millie Molly Mandy. Incredibly sweet. Probably too sweet. I think it's hiding some severe evil juju in the middle of it. Everyone's starving to death, I'm sure of it. Magician's Elephant. Really nice tale. Really good fable. Lots of strands all coming together. Everyone has a nice happy ending. And there's a bit where an elephant falls through the roof of an opera house. And the elephant survives. Ramona Pest. Oh, we're in Ramona's head now, so she's way more interesting and she makes way more sense. And I really quite like this book. And it really does really wonderfully portray what it's like to be amongst 5-year-old children in a classroom, which is what I do for a job. And it just, very well reflected. Oh, the book, the piles, the bells. Parent Trap. Way less annoying than the film. I'm thinking the modern film, but probably less annoying than the other one as well. It's kind of a cool idea. It's kind of sweet. And the very direct narrative and narrator is really good fun. I like Eric Kastner. I've got some more of his at some point. Goes to Thomas Kemp, Penelope Lively. I really like her. I met her a few times. She's a nice person. I prefer her adult books, but this was really cool. The ghost of Thomas Kemp was not a sweet, cute Casper ghost. He was kind of a freaky, deaky ghost, and he hated people, and he tried to burn an old lady's house down. Luckily, that didn't happen. Flora and Ulysses. Kate DiCamillo, after the nice Fably thing, has read what's the name? Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and thought, I can do that, but classy. So she tries to do that, but classy. It doesn't quite work because she doesn't commit to it properly and stuff, but it's still kind of fun. There's a kid's book. Ooh. Flash round. Maybe I should do that for all of them. Too late. Next. Liar's Dictionary. This was for the Samuel Johnson book group. Eley Williams. She was there at the book group. She is exactly the kind of person you'd think would write this book. It's about a dictionary called the Swansby's Dictionary. There are these things called mount weasels in them. And mount weasels are intentional mistakes that are put for various reasons. Well, actually, some of them are unintentional, but the main ones, mount weasels, are intentional. And they're put there partly for copyright reasons. So if you've copied exactly, you've copied the mistakes as well. And they're often quite see-through mistakes. But Swansby's Dictionary, the imaginary dictionary in this, has words that have been added. And the story is, on one level, modern day, the dictionary is being digitised. It's all very decrepit. There's only 2 people working there, and they're trying to find the original, the mount weasels. The other story is about the guy who put them in there. Both these stories are very quirky. They're very fun. The narrative voice is just wonderful. It's this freewheeling wordplay, lots of silly links, silly ideas. I mean, there's a bit where Pelican might be being strangled, but is not actually being strangled, but is having the Heimlich done to it. And it's very daft and very silly and very fun. And I really enjoyed it. And the wordplay is great. And it's just a really good fun book. If you've not read The Liar's Dictionary, I'll go for it. If you like fun not slapstick, but not slapdash either. But fun, broad, wordy stuff. It's great fun. You should go for it. Next, I read Lolly Willowes by Sylvia Townsend Warner. This is in 3/3, which is good, because if it was in 4/3, it'd be in quarters. The first third is a sort of a domestic story about this spinster and how she kind of fails to grasp at life and gets railroaded by the rest of her family. This section is all about how she's beginning to see that she doesn't quite want to be Lolly Willowes, because Willowes is her family name and there's this whole big family tradition, and Lolly's like what the kids call her, their Auntie Lolly. She's beginning to think she wants to be a bit more than this. And part 3 is where she becomes a bit more than this by selling her soul to the devil and becoming a witch. She doesn't actually do any witchy things in it, though. There's a bit where she sells her soul to the devil and becomes a witch, and then I guess we just guess what happens after that. I mean, I knew this was a sort of domestic story about a woman who then goes off and becomes a witch. I wasn't expecting it to be the whole contract with Satan element. He becomes quite an interesting character in this. Not the only book this month in which Satan is a character. But one, we spend a lot of time on her quiet life before, and then we spend her realising, oh, actually, maybe I was always supposed to be a witch, and I was always being led here, and then she tells us old Satan, and the book ends. So we don't actually get any fun witchy stuff out of it. It's really a story of how women's lives at this period are a bit flat and don't have many options. And if I'm going to read something like that, I would want have I forgotten her name? She wrote wonderful stuff. She wrote Enchanted April. She wrote German Garden. Elizabeth von Arnhem. If I wanted that, I'd read of Elizabeth von Arnhem. This doesn't quite do it. If Elizabeth von Arnhem did a story about a spinster selling her soul to the devil and getting witchy powers, we'd then have a whole bunch of stuff about all the cool witchy stuff she did, which doesn't happen on this. Talking of witches, we've gone back to kind of spooky. This is the Yorkshire Witch, the life and trial of Mary Bateman. Interestingly, there's a connection with this and one of my other sort of strand of interests, which is Joanna Southcott and I was going to call them the Panachettas, the Panaceans. I've read a few books about her. She was a woman who believed she had messages from God, and at one point, Mary Bateman says that she's a follower of Southcott and that she has these magical eggs. There's the eggs, and the eggs are being laid by chickens, and the eggs have messages on them like saying Christ is coming and it's counting down to the Armageddon. That was just one of her many cons. Generally, her con was to go around your house and steal your shit. There wasn't. She's a thief, but she's also a con artist, and she also sort of did spells and things. Like she'd read people's palms, and then she'd say, "Oh, there's danger coming for you. What you need to do is you need to give me 4 gold coins, and I'll give them to my friend who's the magic person. I'm just in between, and she'll make charms and sew them in bags. Do not open these bags for 18 months, okay? Tie them into your bed, and the bad thing I'm predicting for you, like your husband will leave you or whatever, won't happen." And so they do that. If they were to open those coins early, before the 18 months, oh dear, the bags would have not coins in them anymore. They'd just have weights or something. But then more than that, it'd be like, oh, my friend, because we're dealing with harsh magic, her tea kettle is now cursed. So can you buy her a new tea kettle? This particular one from this magazine, also, could you buy these teacups and these tea saucers and this whole tea set, please? Oh, and some milk. And so she'd do this until she'd drain people dry. But then where it gets really creepy is if you were getting near the end of your time, like your 18 months was coming up, and she hadn't managed to get back into your house and untie them and take them away or replace them with a new one you can't open for 18 months, she'd then say, here is some really good cordial that's going to make you better, containing arsenic and kill you. So she probably was a serial killer as well. She was certainly hanged for a murder. It seems weirdly see-through as a con, but it worked. She conned families out of their entire everything. And it'd be like, my friend who's like the good witch really, really needs a new dress. So send her a new dress because her old dress is cursed. And then she'd be walking about in the dress. Dumb. So that's all the books I finished this month. I started the Lancashire Witches. Or if you're going to use the awful Lancashire dialect that William Harrison Ainsworth writes in, the Lancashire Witches. Because he writes in this awful dialect, which seeing as he's from Lancashire, you'd think it would sound more like human speech, but there you go. As you can see, I'm not all the way through this. This is 700 pages. I've read 400, and tomorrow I'll probably read about 50 to 80, but I won't finish it, so I'll talk about that next time. Anyway, that is the end of October. I've read a lot, and I've had a really good time, and I hope you will too in the next month. Bye.